Deborah Tutnauer, are you ready to fearlessly question today?
I am.
Fantastic. I like the enthusiasm, yet kind of subtle. I like it. So that was good. So no, but seriously, I want to say that I first want to tell everybody I had the actual pleasure of meeting you in person back in March out in San Diego, and in my pre-show rant, I dubbed you with the award of being the most interesting person I didn't expect to meet, which I don't know how many conferences you go to, but the more conversations I find myself in, the more depressed I get with the conversation that is ensuing. And so I was actually pleasantly surprised to talk to somebody that was not that. So how are you doing today, Deborah?
I'm great, and I have to say that I had a similar feeling from you at that event. I met some cool people, but I'm not really great at chit-chat, and we just dove right into it, and it was really refreshing, and I think that's why we've kind of built the relationship between us since then. I'm
Well,
great.
yeah, well, and you know, you also share the title of person I don't think no matter what I do or say will ever receive complete and utter 100% satisfaction from. Even though it is one of my goals, I don't think it's possible.
Say that one more time.
Basically meaning, like we were talking before the show, you're very detail-oriented. Whatever I do or say, I don't think I could ever get 100% satisfaction from. You're always going to tell me there's something that can be improved and keep me on my toes. And I like that. I like that. I like knowing that I'm going to just get kind of smacked around a little bit and told that I can probably do better from you.
Yeah, I can be a little edgy, that's for sure.
Well, I
But
mean,
only with people I really like.
if I think the trick is if we spend too much time together, then there might be some kind of physical altercation that would break out. But I think that might just be the secret, just limited interaction. Maybe not locking ourselves in a snowy cabin for a week. That'd probably be a bad idea. But let's get a little serious, just a little bit, and then we'll get really serious. Um, First fearless question before we actually get into the real fearless questions. Um, what what is this is a weird question. What is the most time you will allow something to be shipped to your house? Like, how long will you let something be shipped to your house? How many days will you accept in shipping?
I guess it depends on the item and how badly I need it. I know, honestly, I live in a really rural place. So a lot of things get shipped to my house, and they get shipped in all different ways. And the joke is I live about 4.5 hours southwest of Denver. And the joke is that things get to Denver and then they walk here the rest of the way. So, Amazon Prime, I love Amazon Prime, gets it here in 2 days. But other things, I guess it depends on how badly I need it, and I don't really care. If I don't care, then it just arrives.
Yeah, I mean, Amazon has just basically ruined the internet for me because I mean they've set an expectation that nobody else can really match for the most part, and it just really bums me out when it doesn't happen. And I
Well,
didn't know if I was the only one having those kind of suicidal shipping thoughts.
well, you definitely get used to the 2-day shipping. I mean, even here, there's nothing that gets here in 2 days. Even overnight shipping barely gets here in 2 days. So the fact that Amazon can do that, I'm not really sure how they do that. But it's really common. My mother can send me a letter from Massachusetts, and it could take 10 days to arrive. And we don't even get mail delivery. So it arrives in the post office. So you have to go to the post office, open your box, get the little card, wait on the line. It's a little retro.
Wow, that I don't know if that sounds terrible or quaint. It's one of the two, but
You see
um,
everybody in town when you go to the post office. It's a great
yeah,
big social scene.
well, everybody goes and hangs out at the post office. You're really that's it's a rip roaring good time over there, isn't it?
It is.
All right. Well, let's go ahead. Let's catch everybody up. Why don't you tell everybody your story as it relates to fearlessly questioning hating money?
All right, the quick and dirty version of hating money is back in 1981 when I graduated from college. It was the time of dress for success. I mean, even women were wearing suits with little bow ties, and I went to school at it was the almost Ivy League school. I went to Colgate University, which is where a lot of people went when they couldn't get into Dartmouth. Anyway, it definitely had that edgy of Ivy League, and 90%. I don't know what the real number was, but it felt like 90% of the people in my graduating class went on to be lawyers, doctors, bankers, investment bankers, anything that required a suit and a tie and a desk and whatever else was required for that. And I went off and became a ski bum because first of all, I love skiing. And second of all, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I knew I didn't want to do something that meant dressing up and playing a game that didn't have meaning or value to me. And for many years of my life, from that time forward, I ended up becoming a professional. I have a master's in education. I have a master's in clinical social work. But I always felt that there was nothing I was going to do in my life that didn't have value and meaning. And for a long time, I felt that the quest for money disrupted people's even inner connection to value and meaning. And so I used to joke that I really only needed a car and a lot of gear for skiing and hiking and biking and a teepee. And that was it. And of course, it was 19 degrees below zero this morning where I live. A teepee wouldn't have been the main thing. But the whole concept of money warping people's perception of what's real in life, and money warping people's perception of what's important. And in the era that I began my adulthood, the quest for money was really huge, and there wasn't a big focus on what's it for, what does it buy, what's the meaning, how does it make the world a better place. And I guess that's the beginning of my story. There's been changes over the years, but it was definitely I only want enough money so that I can do what I want to do, which is to impact people's lives and to be out in nature. And beyond that, I felt money was pretty evil.
2 master's degrees. That's pretty impressive. Probably the wrong show to bring up my feelings on college, then, huh? I'm probably we're not gonna do that then.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm glad I have them. I love being a student. I have some really extreme views on higher education at the moment too. So that could be another show.
Indeed, it could. Well, we'll book it after we're done. Well, I think in what you said too, I think it's all about the time period in which you actually received your degrees, because within the last coming 4 or 5 years, I think, like you said, you can have a little bit more of an extreme viewpoint on that as well too. But like you said, definitely another show. So all right, so let's go ahead. Let's pull the gloves right off, as we normally like to do. And the first real fearless question to you is, and I don't know. There's always this is what has bothered me, and this goes all the way back to my days in college. Should we accept money, or can we do better?
Should we accept money as what it is now, or should we accept money like when someone wants to hand us a $5 bill?
Like what it is now.
Should we accept money? You mean like if we had a magic wand, should we completely change the economic paradigm of the world?
Kind
so
of, yeah.
that
I don't want to use heavy
money,
language, but yes, yeah.
I'm having multiple thoughts at the same time. If we go back to where money came from, why we have money. I mean, money came into being as a convenience, right? If I wanted some eggs and you needed some milk, you could get milk from my cow and I could get eggs from your chicken, and we didn't need money. But when things became more complicated than that, there needed to be something that was the exchange medium in between. And so when you don't have money, what you have is barter. And I seriously wonder if barter is actually possible in its pure sense in the complexity of the world today. So should we accept money? I think that we have to accept something that does the job that money does. Should we accept all the power and divisiveness and inequality related to money? I think that that's something that we need to continually actually not fight against, but work with to change in the way that money is distributed through our world. And someone's going to type in, I'm a bleeding heart liberal, but there's a lot of things that go on in our world that are a mess because money is not just an easy way to trade the chicken for the cow. Money has all kinds of layers laid on top of it. And I don't think we should accept that, but I do think we need something that that allows the exchange of goods and services without just a straight back and forth barter. There's just got to be. The world's too complex.
Right. Well, I mean, if we're being honest, we invented both money and the jobs that we created to earn such money, right? So, so let's say you said we had barter and then we had money. So, but we don't want to go back to barter because obviously that would be a regression as opposed to a progression. So, I guess, and I'm not asking you to have this answer because if either one of us had this answer, we would not be talking to each other right now. But the idea is are we on the cusp of that next evolution?
I think in some ways we are, and in other ways we are just tied to an old paradigm. I think there needs to be a next revolution in terms of, again, not the money. I mean, what is money, right? Money in theory is just a piece of paper tied to, something that has value, or should have been if it was still tied to the gold standard in the United States. That's all money is. It's just a means of exchanging goods, services, value, and getting rewarded for what you exchange so that you can then take that and exchange it for something that you need. So it's just a multi-step barter system is really all that it is. But, are we on the cusp of something new? I think that over the 21st century, my guess is there has got to be some kind of revolutionary shift in the power that money holds over people and the way money is dispersed and the games that are played with money on Wall Street and by governments. It's just got to change. At some point, people are just going to say, this is enough, something is wrong with this system. But I don't know, and I guess if I did, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I don't know what the alternative would be. But to me, it's got to be something cleaner, something with less baggage.
Yeah, I often always find myself telling myself that I feel like I'm not smart enough to think about this in that way to like even comprehend these solutions. But at the same point, well, maybe that's a problem. People think they're too smart, and that's why we can't get to where we're going. But we're talking about the negativity of it a little bit here, and the question that I have is why do we let it, being money, destroy / control so many things?
I think there's a huge cultural piece, and I can only speak for Western society culture and United States culture because that's the culture that I'm.
We don't have a huge viewership over in Africa, anything like that.
Okay, great.
I got an email from a while ago, but that's it. So don't worry about offending that fan base.
Why do we let money have so much power? Is that what the question was?
Why do we let it destroy / control so many things? Which is, I guess you could turn around and say power.
I think it's because a lot of times people are just going through life on autopilot, and they don't stop to consciously think about what they're doing and what it means and how they're reacting. A lot of what I think about, I'm very conscious about things, as you know, and it's not just money, it's all kinds of things that we let have more control over us than is really warranted. Culturally, we grow up so wrapped around money, whether it's the cliches of money doesn't grow on trees, or money's the root of all evil, or you must have a lot of money or you're not going to be successful. I mean, whatever the cliche is that we learn from our family of origin and that we learn from the society that we're in and we learn from our schools, that becomes one of our stories and our filters that everything we experience, goes through. It just goes through, and the only way to make that different is to take the time to stop and dig into it and assess what your relationship really is with it. Otherwise, it's just on autopilot. And so it's not a matter, I don't think, of allowing as much as it's a matter of most people just don't pay attention. It just kind of is. And so it becomes a reactive thing rather than a conscious thought process thing.
Does it become more of an inability to see options beyond where you currently exist? So like I'm thinking of people that, my neighbors and things like that work kind of, jobs that are very limited in what they could actually earn. They don't see the potential or possibilities to kind of create something to improve their life, dramatically. Yeah, they might get a 0.5% raise, or they might get to work overtime on Saturdays, but I mean ultimately They're just, putting a little bit more icing on top of a pretty terrible tasting cake.
Isn't that, I mean, again, we're back to education, but that's sort of what the education system as it stands today trains people to do. It doesn't really train people to think outside the box. It doesn't really train people to explore the edges or to think in the world of possibilities, number one. Number two, and I just finished reading this great book called Down and Out in America, newly published, about poverty in America and living in poverty in America and what it's really like, or on the edge of poverty or just above the poverty line. And I'm a social worker. I've worked with people who are seriously down and out, and the reality of that is that we can sit here as the haves, because even though I might not be wealthy and you might not be wealthy, we're wealthy enough to have the luxury of having a philosophical conversation, whereas people who are scrounging to be able to buy food and scrounging to make sure they can afford rent and maybe have $100 in the bank are working 2 to 3 jobs, sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night maybe. There's no room to explore this conversation. There's no room in their whole energetic field to say, wow, if I did something other than these, minimum wage jobs or even this salary job, what would I do? Because you have to have a little space and time and sleep to be able to even have those thoughts. And so from our position, and probably from most of the people watching this Hangouts position, we can't really know, unless we've already been there, what it's like to not even have the luxury of having the time to have the thoughts about what else you could do rather than your very low-paying hand-to-mouth job.
Okay, I think I like that. So what I want to do now is, one, I'm gonna invite everybody that is watching. We got about half a show left. If you want to ask Deborah a fearless question of your own, well, feel free to put that into the event page and just use the hashtag camera ready so that we know that you're decent and willing to be seen by the public. And we can bring you onto the show and have you ask it face to face with Deborah. But what she's gonna do right now, probably one of my favorite parts of the show, because I get to take a break. We're going to turn the tables. We're going to let you take a break from answering the questions, and we're going to turn the tables on the audience and have you ask your own fearless question to them, something you've always kind of want to know the answer to, but we're unsure of the response. What is that question, Deborah?
It's actually a fearless question for you, the audience, and I think it comes from, again, how I view life and also the work that I do. But here's the question. And I've got an answer of my own. I'm sure everyone does. In your life, what's the one thing that nags you like an itch, that's wanting to be scratched? It keeps coming up, but you think it's either too big, too scary, too complicated, or too disruptive to focus on.
All right. Well, interesting. I might try and answer that. I don't know if I got something. I don't know if I have anything. I think the whole disruption thing is key because people are very afraid of disrupting whatever it is, whether it be consciously or subconsciously, just because it would be too messy. But if anybody does want to jump in and share their answers, we will go ahead and sprinkle those in throughout the show as they come trickling in, Deborah. That's pretty deep. And you also win the award for being the only guest, or the guest that has been on the show to write down just about everything. You're very prepared, and you make me look completely unorganized. And I cry myself to sleep every time we're done with a hangout because I'm just so unorganized.
Well, I'm going to have to make that up to you somehow.
Okay. Well, we'll see what we can do. My other goal in the show, too, is to have somebody do like a real live spit take on the show when they're drinking, because everyone's always drinking something. I just want to say something funny enough to where somebody gives me a real spit take, like we're doing Three Stooges type stuff. But one of these days, somebody maybe will get there. I want to bring this in. This is a little long. I'll try and read most of it. But Alex Ricky Gonzalez says, but if it wasn't money, and some of this is cut off, so I'll keep reading. She said, if it wasn't money, won't we always find a way to compare ourselves to others as is a way for us to better ourselves? So even if we didn't have money, wouldn't we still find a way to measure success against others around us? So talking about philosophical, Deborah, I'll let you take that one.
Ooh. Well, the first place I want to go with that is, why are we ever comparing ourselves to others? And is success really about financial? So there's two parts that come right to me from that question. The first is, why is success financially measured? Should it be financially measured? You know, does money make you happy? And the other one is, I personally don't believe we should ever compare ourselves to others. I think that is, I think our education system actually sets us up for that. I think that our own sometimes feelings of inadequacy and self-worth have us comparing ourselves to others. But what does that really do for us? Is that really what we're trying to do? Or are we really trying to be the best person that we can be and live a life that's in alignment with our core values and be able to take care of our families? I mean, isn't that really what it's about, regardless of what anyone else has achieved or anyone else has done or anyone else is doing?
So I'm going to hit you with this, and I like that answer too, because I think we get into that kind of that comparison a little bit too much. But I think there's a difference between being making a comparison and being competitive, because I like to be competitive with things maybe more so than other people. But the way that I view that whole kind of thing is I feel like you should be smart enough to be able to have enough money that to be able to do what you want with. I think that's kind of the benchmark I have with it. Would that be a safe assumption, or am I kind of off base on that?
So what you said is you think that people should be smart enough to be able to have enough money to do what they want.
Well, you're saying should we look at financial being, having money, a certain amount of it, as a financial benchmark or a successful benchmark? So what I would say to that is if that person is truly successful or smart enough, I would say that they should be smart enough to have enough of whatever it is, so they're not worried about it or complaining about it or having it be anything other than just there for them. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I think what you're saying is enough money or enough success really means being able to do what you want, when you want, with who you want.
Kind of. I guess I'm saying that the point is we're talking about the education system and comparing. I think just the idea that listen, it shouldn't be the end all be all, like, hey, this is what's going to make me consider myself a success, but it should be able to say, like, I'm smart enough to know that this is important and I can get around this, and like we said, like we kind of talked about before, it's more of it's a game, and I should be able to win at it enough to the point that I want to win at.
One would hope so. I think one would hope so. I think in our country, and I keep going back to getting a little political here, but being smart enough is not enough. I think that if someone's working 40 hours a week at a job, and even for 40 hours a week of work, that job doesn't cover their bills, and they're living relatively frugally, I think that's a systemic issue right then and there. But I think what you're saying is maybe success is figuring out a way, whether it's through work, through entrepreneurship, through creative restructuring of your life, to live a life of meaning and joy and value and have a roof over your head and clothes on your back and being able to feed your family, and putting all those pieces together. And shouldn't we be able to do that? And maybe that's the definition of success.
Yes, that's exactly what I was trying to say. So congratulations, and thank you for saying it better than I could. Next week, Deborah will be hosting the show. I will no longer be asking any questions. But so let me ask this question, and this is the next question. I think this kind of will get us to where we're going. So is it and try and stay with me on this, is it the relativity of money and time that really prevents us from kind of seeing its true purpose?
Is it the relativity of money and time? Meaning,
so coming back to that person that's working, like you said, that 40 hours a week, like they're not seeing the relativity of time and money.
I don't think they even have the time to think about it. If you look at like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if your need at the moment is to make sure that you're bringing home food for your kids and making sure they don't turn the heat off, you're nowhere near that hierarchy of having 5 minutes to think about alternatives or think about possibilities or think about even if you have enough time or you're getting enough time for the money that you're putting in. It's not even on your radar screen. It's not even on your plate. So, if we're talking extremes, you have to be at a certain level of comfort to be able to even have time and energy to think about the questions that we're asking.
This is one time I might be able to say this, but I think you're being a little soft on this one, Deborah. I think you're giving them a little bit of a break.
What do you mean?
Well, I think that person that is, whether it's a great 9 to 5 or 40-hour week job, I mean, they're not like locked in a dungeon in Mexico or anything. I mean, like they have a decent house, they're going to eat, they know where their next meal is coming from, and chances are they probably have a Netflix account, and they can probably sit down for 5 minutes after that show they watched and think about it if they wanted to. No?
Absolutely. So if we're talking about more the average American, I think people, they don't. I think people are a little numbed out. I think it's easier to have a habit of turning on the TV or having another beer, or I think the person who's going to sit down and say, I want to explore alternatives, I want to look at money differently, I want to really understand where money fits in my own life and with my family, and I want to make a plan for my future that gives me some options. I think it's the rare person who even has that thought process, because they don't. I could pin it on society, I could pin it on TV, I can pin it on movies and media, but I think that it's uncomfortable to try something new. It's uncomfortable to break a habit. It's uncomfortable to ask yourself a question that you may not have the answer for yet. And so I think a lot of people don't, unless something crosses their path, whether it's a person, an idea, a book, an interaction that makes them it's almost like something crosses their path, and all of a sudden that comfortable box of habit goes boom, and they go, oh, I never thought of that before. I should think about this, or I'd like to think about this, or I didn't even realize I could think about this.
Yeah, I think so. I'm gonna pause our conversation, and I'm going to give a little viewing PSA. Peter says he paused the replay to catch a little bit of Deborah live, and I guess a little bit of me. Peter, always watch live. Live is always better than the replay. Glad that you're here. Welcome, and glad that Peter could be joining us. He's a very handsome man. I didn't say that out loud, did I?
You did.
I did.
Very smart man, too. Talk about seeing outside the box. Yes.
Well, we always like as many of those people around here as we can. My last official Fearless question for you as we start to wrap things up here, and this kind of ties into what we've been kind of leading down this path. See, I'm smart like that. I kind of set these things up this way. But so then how can we start buying more choices and options than with the money that we do have?
Buying more choices and options?
So like coming down to the idea that money isn't necessarily about buying stuff, it's about buying, it allows you the ability to buy, to have choices, to have options, to do things that you might not necessarily be able to do. So how do we start doing that with what we have to get more, I guess?
I feel that it begins with being really conscious and with taking some time to understand what you're working for. And you wrote that on the description. What are you really working for? I promise you are not working for, a pile of, as you said, dead presidents all over your kitchen table. That's not what people are working for. I think a shift would come for an individual and society as a whole if people thought about, what are you working for? What is your why? One person's dream is not another person's dream. So you, as an individual, you who are watching this today or listening to it on the podcast, what are you working for? Are you working for, a second home in the Bahamas? Or are you working for freedom to travel? Or are you working for the opportunity to be an entrepreneur, or are you working for, feeding hungry children in Africa? What are you working for? And when you know what you're working for, then I think money has to, because they're so intricately tied together, take on a new meaning. And that's where the shift changed for me from hating money to actually loving money, not the dead president's piece of it, piles of it, but loving that when you reach a certain level of comfort with being paid for the value of what you're doing, and you reach a certain level of comfort, your options open up substantially in terms of impact that you can make and choices that you can make, and it becomes a freedom thing, and for me it becomes a caring thing. That's a big value for me. So what is it for you? You know, what are you working for? What is it that you're really earning? And when you can start to wrap your head around that, then you can actually make some choices about how much money you need and what you're going to do with that money.
Yeah, and I think that I think that's a lot of it, but I'm not even sure where we started with the choices. So I guess okay, what I wanted to say was I think tell me if this is something that you see a lot, where people, is it the most depressing thing for you to see that people can't even, like we were talking about, that probably should be able to see these sorts of problems, concerns, have these thoughts, but don't? Is that very depressing? Do you see that a lot? Because we've been talking about the people that probably are not able or in the position to, but the person that is that alarming?
Is it alarming?
That might be a strong word, but
that's a strong word. I don't know if it's alarming. I think it's sad. I don't know if it's alarming. But I do think it's sad when people are feeling stuck or frustrated or uncomfortable or unhappy, and they don't see a way out, and they don't even understand why they're feeling that. To me, that's sad, and oftentimes money is really tied into that. Work is tied into that. Freedom and flexibility is tied into that. And a lot of times it's very hard for people to see options. It's really hard for people to see options, as opposed to, this is the way I've always done it and this is the way I'm always going to do it. And to me, it's sad, and it's also an opportunity, because of the work I do, is to help people see options, right? To help people step outside of their box and to realize that there's a really gigantic world of possibilities outside of that. And so I don't see it as alarming. No, I see it as sad, and I also see it as a place of opportunity.
Well, as we wrap this thing up, put a nice little bow on it, what is one option you would want somebody to see or take away from this?
I guess the one option I'd want people to take away from this is that regardless of how things are today, and regardless of how you see them today, and whatever the limitations are that you imagine are there, that it's not true. That there are always possibilities, there is always a different way, and you might not be able to see it because we have such a hard time seeing our forest for the trees, or seeing through our own filters. But to realize that possibilities always exist, and if you can't see them yourself, that doesn't mean they're not there. It just means that maybe it would be good to bat that conversation around with somebody until you find someone who can help you, peek out that window of your box and realize that there are other things other than what you can imagine right now.
All right, well, very well said, Deborah. This has been fantastic. I don't know if we made things better or worse for people. Hopefully better. We stirred some things up, that's for sure. But I do really appreciate you taking the time to be with us here today. Where can people find out more about you if they are feeling so inclined?
They can find me here on Google+. If they're listening to the Hangout, I'm Deborah Tutnauer. They can Google me, or most easily go to my website, which is deborrahtutnauer.com. That's spelled DeborahTutnauer. And they can find me there. There's a little contact button at the bottom of the page. There's a great big opt-in form in the middle of the page. And I'm pretty easy to find. I'm all over social media. And yeah, I appreciate questions, emails, comments, ideas. Yeah.
All right. Well, Deborah, as always, we'll have to do this again sometime. Maybe we can fearlessly question education. Maybe we can get our buddy. He's not our buddy. We don't know him personally. James Altucher. I know he's one of the big proponents against big time education. We'll just stick that in the pipe dream jar, and
Okay.
we'll think about it later. But I did want to encourage everybody to head on over to fearlesslyquestioning.com/getfearless to hear your fearless question you are most afraid to ask yourself. And I have to say, probably the single most challenging one I've heard so far, and all of the guests, it really kind of started to kind of make my head hurt just a little bit. Blood started to shoot out of my nose after I thought about it for too long, but it was a good one. And Deborah, of course, as always, it's a pleasure to talk with you.
And always, it's a pleasure to talk with you. I really thank you for the opportunity to be on here, stirring things up, asking some deep questions. I think getting people to think a little differently, which is what you do on all these Fearlessly Questioning shows. So I feel honored to be on here, and thank you very much.
All right, well, we do our best. We don't always guarantee those promises, but we do our best. So we'll catch everybody on the next one. I'll take it easy. See you guys later.